We did a segment on Bill Maher's Club Random podcast interview with Jim Gaffigan where he said that the writers were being kooky in their demands, the striking WGA members, kooky in a lot of their demands, and that he thought that they acted as though they were entitled to make a living as writers. So we kind of saw him sort of reveal his actual attitudes toward the striking writers, and now not only is he scabbing and restarting Real Time with Bill Maher, which we'll get to in a moment, but Drew Barrymore is also scabbing here. So Drew Barrymore posted on Instagram, I made a choice to walk away from the MTV Film and Television Awards because I was the host and it had a direct conflict with what the strike was dealing with, which was studios, streamers, film, and television. It was also in the first week of the strike, and so I did what I thought was the appropriate thing at the time to stand in solidarity with the writers. And to be clear, our talk show actually wrapped on April 20th, so we never had to shut down the show. This is like fifth grade writing level, by the way. She's going to have a hell of a time without her writers because this is like literally a fifth grader wrote this. However, I am also making the choice to come back for the first time in this strike for our show that may have my name on it, but this is bigger than just me. Look at that sentence structure. She's going to do a show with no writers. However, I am also making the choice to come back for the first time in this strike for our show that may have my name on it, but this is bigger than just me. Literally, I mean, if a fifth grader wrote that, I would give him a C. I own this choice. We are in compliance with not discussing or promoting film and television that is struck of any kind. We launched live in a global pandemic. Our show was built for sensitive times. Yeah, people really turned to the Drew Barrymore. I didn't even know this fucking show existed. I didn't know she had a show. And has only functioned through what the real world is going through in real time. I want to be there to provide what writers do so well. I want to be there. Listen to this idiot. She cannot write. She can't write the post. She's going to run the show? I want to be there to provide what writers do so well, which is a way to bring us together or help us make sense of the human experience. I hope for a resolve for everyone as soon as possible. We have navigated difficult times since we first came on air, and so I take a step forward, to start season 4 once again with an astute humility. She can't write. Come on, I'm not being mean. She's going to attempt the show with no writers? What monologue is she going to do on her show? She can barely talk. The Drew Barrymore show's WGA writers, fans, and our union allies held the picket line for 8+ hours outside of CVS. So this is the WGA East. So here they are picketing the return of her show, Scab That She Is, Drew's News Strikes, Drew's WGA crew. So I guess these are her writers that are actually striking. That's some bad blood. You might have a hard time winning them back. That's the thing that these people are not quite getting here is that once you cross this picket line, who's going to come back and work for you? Like, why would any of your writing staff return once you basically not only did you cross the picket line and jeopardize the effectiveness of their strike, but you're really disrespecting them in the ultimate way, being like, well, yeah, we can do the show without you. We don't need you. Right? Do you like breaking strikes? This is a little coffee stand that they set up to support the striking writers outside of the CBS building. In addition to that, The Hollywood Reporter reports Drew Barrymore's show audience members say they were kicked out for Writers Guild support amid picket. The Writers Guild of America members and scribes for the Drew Barrymore show picketed outside CBS studios in New York on Monday as the daytime talker resumed filming amid the writers and actors' strikes. 2 audience members who had signed up for free tickets to the taping were handed WGA pins by picketers as they walked in the door and say they were asked to leave before the show began because they were wearing the pins. Dominic Turasek and Cassidy Carter, 2 New York City-based students, planned to attend the show after signing up free tickets about a week and a half ago, not aware that the strike was going on. As they walked into the building Monday, both were handed buttons from the picketers that read Writers Guild on strike. The 2 say they were asked to take off the buttons at security, to which Carter complied. Turasek was still wearing his button as they entered the studio space. He said a crew member spotted the button and asked them both to leave. These are the anti-fascists, by the way. This is liberal Hollywood standing up against the fascism of Donald Trump. You can't wear a button supporting the striking writers in the audience, not on the show. In the audience, what are the odds that any of the talent or crew of the show would even notice one of those buttons? Very, very small. They weren't allowed to wear them anyway. All right, now we get to Bill Maher. Real time is coming back. Unfortunately, sans writers or writing. So Bill Maher, also a scab here. It has been 5 months, and it's time to bring people back to work. The writers have important issues that I sympathize with and hope they are addressed to their satisfaction. But they are not the only people with issues, problems, and concerns. Despite some assistance from me, much of the staff is struggling mightily. Okay, so why don't you give them some more fucking assistance? I mean, you're worth a lot of money. It seems like there's a way to solve this without crossing the picket line, which is give them some more money if they're struggling mightily. We all were hopeful, or actually, now that I think of it, I didn't even think of this when I was doing this prep. As nauseating as those 5 douchebags are, Fallon, Colbert, John Oliver, Seth Meyers, and whoever the other one is, Jimmy Kimmel, as bad as they are doing a podcast and donating the proceeds of the podcast to the crews of the show. So Bill Maher has a podcast. He has his Club Random podcast. That does pretty well. Gets a lot of traffic on YouTube, so he's got to be raking in some decent YouTube ad money. He has sponsors where he does ad reads during the show. Gets a lot of downloads on the podcast platforms, I'd imagine. And so it looks like he has plenty of money coming in through his podcast. And so in addition to the very, very large net worth of Bill Maher to begin with, he's got money coming in now. So why not do what the late night comics did and donate that money to the crew who's out of work now? No, instead, we're going to cross the picket line and restart our stupid, fucking irrelevant bullshit show. We all were hopeful, he said, this would come to an end after Labor Day, but that day has come and gone, and there still seems to be nothing happening. I love my writers. I am one of them. I'm just much richer than all of them combined. but I'm not prepared to lose an entire year and see so many below-the-line people suffer so much. Oh, what a caring guy. What a compassionate guy. I will honor the spirit of the strike by not doing a monologue, desk piece, new rules, or editorial, the written pieces that I am so proud of, on real time. Okay, so he's not going to do the stand-up set at the beginning. He's not going to do the mid-show monologue, which is either like a parody piece or something else. The new rules or the editorial, the long-form monologue at the end. And I'll say it up front to the audience. The show I will be doing without my writers will not be as good as our normal show, full stop. But the heart of the show is an off-the-cuff panel discussion that aims to cut through the bullshit and predictable partisanship, and that will continue. The show will not disappoint. Well, at this point, it seems like the show is just a roundtable discussion, an unscripted political talk show, which he already has in the form of his Club Random podcast. So why wouldn't he just bring his real-time guests into his basement and do a podcast with them? That would actually be a good show. Because the people who he has on the podcast are kind of interesting. The people who he has on real time are kind of boring. So I would actually tune in to a Club Random podcast where he would have, like, I don't know, Bill Kristol and David Frum go in his basement and get shit-faced and confess to their crimes. Like, that would actually be interesting. I would actually watch that. No, we have to do this whole thing where we bring people into a studio and sit around the table so that the camera guys can work and the sound guys can work and the front of house staff can work, right? When you could just pay them anyway and maintain solidarity with the writers. But no, we're going to put on this whole show with these boring people doing boring commentary. Take out the stand-up, take out the editorials, take out the little parody bits. Take out everything that used to set the show apart in an interesting way. It really doesn't anymore. The show's been unwatchable for a while. We have to bring people in to put on our HBO show. because HBO needs the money and I need to start getting paid again. And the writers, I love them. I'm one of them. But they're costing me money and they're costing the crew money, even though I can afford to support the crew for as long as this strike goes on. Teamsters, Local 804. New rules, knobstick. Bill Maher trended along with Scab on Twitter after he announced this. Thomas Moore. Bill Maher could support 20 families for a year with 1% of his income. Drew Barrymore could support 18 families for a year with 1% of her income. They don't need to start their show again to support the IATSE, which is the stagehand union. Absolutely true. The Writers Guild of America West. So this is the West Coast branch because the Drew Barrymore show tapes in New York. Bill Maher obviously tapes in L.A. Bill Maher's decision to go back on the air while his guild is on strike is disappointing. If he goes forward with this plan, he needs to honor more than the spirit of the strike. As a WGA member, Bill Maher is obligated to follow the strike rules and not perform any writing services. Now, that's very difficult to enforce because you can't get inside his head and know that he's not, coming up with any lines or monologues that he will repeat in a quote-unquote off-the-cuff presentation on the show. But the spirit of what he's saying is true. It is difficult to imagine how real-timers can go forward without a violation of WGA strike rules taking place, and so the WGA will be picketing this show. So, Bill Maher, is basically just a cranky old man now. Between the interview with Marianne Williamson, where he pulled off the very difficult feat of making her look in touch with the needs of poor and working people by comparison, saying, well, I don't see too much pain out there in America. And she says, well, have you been to Skid Row? Well, no, obviously. Why would I go to Skid Row, right? Between him telling Jim Gaffigan that the writers' demands are kooky and that they feel they're entitled to a living, as if professional unionized writers who provide material to highly profitable films and TV shows are not owed a living. Like, we're not talking about your cousin who just graduated from Tisch Film School who has a script that he thinks is dynamite, and isn't it unfair that the rest of the world doesn't like it? That's not what we're talking about. Those aren't the writers who are on strike. The writers who are on strike are professional writers according to the standards set by the industry. That's why they're in the union in the first place. And so professional writers writing at that level for shows as profitable as they are, yes, they are owed a living. Yes, in that situation, they are. And now this, actually crossing the picket line, right? Next time Bill Maher tries to cosplay as some sort of progressive, which he hasn't even tried to do in a number of years, he made vague gestures in support of the Bernie campaign in 2016. But since then, he's been a centrist Democrat, if not actually further right than that even. And so, Bill Maher, Drew Barrymore, scabbing it up on both sides of the country. And it really begs the question, like, how big are these people's egos? Like, all you have to do is sit on your ass and wait for this to resolve itself. Like, that's all you have to do. All you have to do is hang out in your penthouse apartment or your LA mansion, Malibu, Beverly Hills, wherever the fuck you live, and just wait it out. That's all it takes. But what, they can't resist being in front of a camera? Like, the urge to inject yourself into the lives of your audience members is so powerful that now you're going to cross the picket line. What the hell does Drew Barrymore need to do the show for? What does Bill Maher need to do the show for? He has a podcast going already where he, whatever. If you feel a need to get your message out or whatever the hell you do on the Club Random podcast, you just do it. What is the need for this? They're just giant ego monsters. And now they are setting a precedent that they're not going to be able to live down. All right. People are not going to forget this. I hope the writers don't forget this. I hope the writers don't come back to these shows. Why would you? Why would your writing staff return? So let's say the writers for Bill Maher's show get a, amicable deal, right, from whatever studios they are sparring with. Why would you go back and write for a boss that crossed the picket line? I hope they don't. I hope they don't.
Please clap.